We're coming to you from outside Bharat Mandapam, and the big news that's coming in is that the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration has been adopted. It's a big win for India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, just a short while ago, making that historic announcement. And the Sherpa, India's Sherpa to the G20 also uses words like today's era must be marked as the golden age of human-centric globalization, and India's G20 presidency under Prime Minister Narendra Modi has worked tirelessly towards this goal. There's a big news coming in from Bharat Mandapam. Earlier, the news about African Union's inclusion, and now the gavel on the adoption of New Delhi Declaration by the leaders.
And there are four broader parameters on which the New Delhi Declaration focuses on. We're going to talk about that as well. But remember, this happens to be the second breakthrough for India's G20 moment of the day on day one of 18th G20 summit under India's presidency. Adoption of New Delhi Declaration coming on day one, halfway through. And what are these four focus areas? As I quickly once again introduce my panel on the show. Strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth. Remember, India has been batting for inclusive growth, accelerated inclusive growth, also accelerated progress on the SDGs and Green Development Pact for a sustainable future. Of course, multilateral, I beg your pardon, institutions for the 21st century, and the reforms of those institutions is what India has vociferously talking about, and reinvigorating multilateralism. I'm going to quickly throw it back to Ollie and Sriram Cholya, scholar, researcher and international affairs experts, and Ollie of DD India. Ollie, first of all, this is a breakthrough, of course, but the key words here, if you quickly examine Honorable Prime Minister's statement, and this has been tweeted by the Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant as well. Consensus, he starts by saying good news, quote unquote, consensus and adopted.
Yeah, and just a few hours ago, we were talking about how the next 12 to 24 hours would contain some potentially very difficult negotiations to try and get to a declaration. I think we're there earlier than any of us were expecting. Now we're on the same page. It looks like we're there. What we're now awaiting is the final detail about the language that's in there, and you set out some of those themes that we've heard from India's Sherpa. Key is going to be to see what the language is on Ukraine. We don't know exactly what that is yet. Some of it's been reported language so far, but we await to hear in a press conference that could be just moments away now. That'll be one of the key things to look out for.
Professor Cholya, we don't know the fine print. We'll get to know in just a bit, I believe. But this announcement coming at this time on day one of the two-day-long leader summit, what does it imply?
First of all, victory. The sign of victory. The sign for India's diplomacy achieving, a historic breakthrough. And the tradition in the multilateral summits has been negotiating until the 11th hour, until the last minute, sticking points, many countries holding out, and trying to extract their pound of flesh. It's been that kind of an environment, especially because of the global divisions. And in spite of that, day one of the summit, without even entering day two, we've got adoption of the declaration. I'll tell you, it's a coup. It's a coup d'etat as far as international diplomacy goes. And it also shows, as our Sherpa and others are saying, the Prime Minister himself mentioned it, hard work pays off. Right. When you work hard with a genuine heart, you get the goal. You achieve what you want to.
Right, Professor Cholya, I want to use the phrase that India's Sherpa uses. Human-centric globalization. Was it a proposal that was very difficult for countries to say no to?
Of course, I mean, that's the way we framed it, was very universal and catchy and acceptable to all. So we went for the minimum common denominator type of themes. And even the issues, we'll see it in the declaration text also. I'm pretty sure the wording is sufficiently broad enough for everybody to say, yes, this is something that appeals to me and something I will agree with, my country and my people will agree with. So it takes a lot of diplomatic skill. And, it's not just us, National Broadcaster of India, boasting about it. The whole world is going to acknowledge that the way we conducted this presidency and brought it to its fruitful outcome is unprecedented. This is a kind of thing that, shows what a true leader is on the world stage.
What does this really say about India's consensus building and negotiating tactics? Because We discussed about it, Ollie, in the morning, that the timings of the G20 summit under India's presidency, where India's position at the very outset has been unnecessarily questioned and unnecessarily debated upon. And today we're not even done with the day one, and we already have a consensus.
Well, I think it's just critical to remember that heading into this summit, there was a lot of speculation that we might not get to a declaration, partly because of that thorny issue of Ukraine.
Yes,
and it appears that we are there, and you therefore have to say that that is a victory for diplomacy, not just for India, but also the other countries and organizations around the table. None of them will be 100% happy with everything that's in this declaration in terms of the wording, but they are all happy enough to come together and agree to it. It appears, as I say, the devil will remain in the detail. We await those final details on exactly what's in the text in terms of wording.
Yes, there also lies then the success of the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one earth, one family, one future. There does appear, with the success and the consensus on the declaration, Professor Cholia, that there is going to be something significant for each one of the countries and organizations for them to agree on it.
Yeah, so they're taking home a consensus that they'll also have to implement in their respective countries, and also the non-G20 members, all of them have to have buy-in with the declaration. So it's a continuous process. But without the adoption of the declaration, none of this is possible, right? So we will do the implementation, the follow-through. The G20 has a lot of complex mechanisms by which to make the text a living reality. But let us rejoice in the fact that we got a text. And I would say that, all the question marks have been answered with the reassuring hand of Indian diplomacy. Because before this, there was a big doubt about the viability of multilateralism itself.
Yes.
Multilateral diplomacy, does it have a future? Is it even going to perform? 20 or more countries, can they come together and even do anything together in such a divided world? We are proving that all it takes for multilateralism to succeed is one decisive leadership. So what India has done, and by the way, it's a precedent we have set that will be very hard for everyone who comes after us to maintain, right? So we are actually giving live lessons in diplomacy, not just to our own people or to our constituents, but to the whole world, to say this is how a G20 is done. This is how you achieve success in G20, and that model, the Indian model of G20, is not only human-centric globalization. I would go further and say the way we are handling international institutions, that model is going to become a benchmark for the rest.
Absolutely, they're a big win for India's presidency and also for the Global South, as Prime Minister often ascribes the success to the entire region. We'll be getting you all the latest as it's coming out at Bharat Mandapam. For now, we're returning to our Delhi studio.